All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. So we are continuing Meretz Hashem, a little bit off schedule, but all right, we'll catch up in Meretz Hashem one of these days. So we are continuing today in Perek Gimel with the really incredible, fascinating discussion as to why it is that the righteous suffer. In other words, that we spoke about this idea that on one hand we've created a model. If a person has bitachon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of all of their needs. Yet, the Mechaber points out that we absolutely see that sometimes there are situations where the righteous suffer, and then there are other situations where the wicked prosper. So how do we reconcile that with the concept of bitachon? So we'll say now the Mechaber is going to discuss a variety of different reasons, actually 5 different reasons, as to why sometimes tzaddikim suffer in this world. So he says, Ve'im kol zeh, Ra'isi leva'er be'inyan hazeh ma shehaya bo ma'at hasmaka. So he says, let me go ahead and explain this particular matter, that ultimately, again, that some level of explanation should Meretz Hashem be sufficient. So he explains, V'omer, ki aponim asher ba'avuram yimona me'at tzadik hizdam nus tarfo, ach yitrach alavi bachin bo. So he said, I'm going to explain the reasons why sometimes a righteous person, his parnasa is withheld from him, and ultimately he's tested. So let's go through the reasons. Number 1, after shiyeh avon shekadam lo ischayev li par mimenu, kimo she'amar hin tzadik ba'aretz yishulam. So we'll say possibility number 1 is that perhaps the tzadik has a particular avera. Remember again, we operate with the assumption over here that there is no such thing as a person who doesn't commit averos. Every person has averos. So maybe the tzaddik has a particular avera, and therefore, again, his struggle with parnasa is the way ultimately that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is helping him achieve atonement for his avera. As the pasuk says, Hein tzaddik ba'aretz yushlam. Ultimately, again, the righteous man will pay for his sins on earth. Okay, so that's reason number 1. Again, struggle of parnasa could be a result of one's particular averos. Okay, possibility 2. V'yesh shiyeh al derech hatmura ba'olam haba, kimo shekasav lehitivcha b'achar isecha. So we'll say, interestingly enough, 2 and 1 are somewhat related. But 2 is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give the tzaddik the greatest maximum portion in the world to come. So how does he do that? Ultimately, again, by allowing some of his suffering and some of his difficulty to occur in this world. So there's almost like an exchange. Remember, again, it's somewhat similar to number 1, because at the end of the day, number 1 is saying, perhaps the tzaddik committed an avera, and as a result of that avera, he has to go ahead and struggle for his parnasa. Possibility number 2 is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give the tzaddik a greater portion in the world to come. How does he do that? Through suffering in this world. Suffering in this world is redemptive. Suffering in this world allows one to atone for any averos that he may have, and therefore, again, a larger portion in Olam Haba. Okay? Possibility 3. V'esh yelaros sivlo b'hasbarasa tova ba'avodas habori yisparach k'di shilamdu b'nei adam mimenu k'mo she'edata me'inyan Iyov. So this is fascinating. So possibility number 3 is the Mechaber explains that sometimes the HaKadosh Baruch Hu visits suffering upon a tzaddik, ultimately, again, so that the tzaddik could show other people the ability to maintain a proper attitude, even in the face of adversity. Well, isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible? That sometimes the tzaddik himself, you're right, is not deserving of the suffering. The tzaddik doesn't need the suffering, but rather the whole point of the suffering visited upon the tzaddik is for the tzaddik to model the right kind of behavior. For the tzaddik to model this concept, ultimately, that even in the face of adversity, there is the ability to go ahead and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredible idea. He gives the example of Iyov. Okay? Number 4. V'yesh shiyer l'rasha anshe doro v'yibchanehu v'habori yis'ale ba'oni uberish chubechaloim laharos chasiduso va'avodaso delokim mibaladehem. So I'll say this is interesting. So ultimately, again, he says literally again, there are some tzaddikim who suffer in this world. He says, but it's not because of them. He says it's due to the wickedness of the people of their generation. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tests the tzaddik with poverty, with difficulty, with illness, in order to demonstrate his commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let's say, so again, what number 4 is saying is like this. And again, there is a little bit of overlap between some of these concepts. But in number 4, what the Mechaber is saying is as follows: that when the tzaddik suffers and the tzaddik continues to go ahead and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ultimately, again, what he's showing, he's modeling proper behavior. And I will say, what's there between 3 and 4? So watch this. In number 3, 3 was about the ability to go ahead and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu despite adversity. Number 4 is the ability to show people that you could serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu even if your life is not perfect. So it's almost if I would say, number 3 is a little bit about modeling kind of the right type of demeanor. Number 4 is about the ability to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu even when your life is not perfect. Let me talk about this outside for just a second. Sometimes we think that in order to have a proper spiritual life, all the pieces need to be in order, right? Everything needs to be just so. And the truth is, sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu visits suffering upon the tzaddik to show that even when the pieces are not in place, even when things are not in order, even when things are difficult, there is still the ability somehow to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredible idea. So again, in number 3, so it's almost as if the ability to maintain a good attitude, even in the face of adversity. In number 4, it's the ability to continue in one's service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even when all of the life pieces are not in place. Now, he adds in here, in contrast to the Rishaim. Now, it's a strong word, but he says, what did the Rishaim do? He says the Rishaim only serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu when life is perfect. When everything is exactly as it needs to be, that's when they'll serve. But if there's any level of discomfort, any level of difficulty, they'll take that as an excuse not to serve. And number 5, V'yesh shiyem mipnei she'eneno mekane elokim le'elokim lakachas hadin me'anshei doro kimo she'adate me'inyan Eli ubanav she'amar b'makasuv v'haya kol adoseh b'veischa yavel l'shtachamos lo. So I'll say reason number 5, the Mechaber explains, is ultimately, again, could be that the righteous person, the tzaddik, is being punished. Why? Because he saw negative things occurring and he did not do anything about it. The example he gives is from Eli, right? Eli HaKohen, the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, where Eli saw his own sons going off the derech, his own sons doing things wrong, but yet Eli never protested. And again, Eli is held accountable and liable for the failure to protest the negative activity of his children. So that could be another reason why the tzaddik ultimately is punished. Therefore, I will say, it turns out that the Mechaber advances 5 different reasons as to why the tzaddik could be punished in this world, even though he has complete bitachon. Reason number 1 is ultimately because of some avera that he committed. Reason number 2 is to give him a larger portion in the world to come. Reason number 3 is ultimately, again, to show people how to maintain the proper demeanor, even in the face of difficulty. Reason number 4, to show people that you don't need all of your life circumstances to be perfect to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but one could serve Hashem even in the midst of a sea of imperfection. And reason number 5 is because perhaps the tzaddik saw something negative occurring and never protested. And I will say, failure to protest a wrong is in and of itself being complicit in that very wrong. And therefore, perhaps, again, the tzaddik is being held accountable for that. Okay? Incredible. Then I will say, now watch this. Let's at least begin the next section. Now, in the next section, he says, but what... Okay, so now, I'll say, again, just to be clear, now, does that mean that every single time you see a tzaddik suffering, it's because of one of these 5 reasons? The answer to that, of course, is going to be no. Remember, what did we learn in yesterday's shir? What we learned in yesterday's shir is that why did the righteous suffer? Because ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs a very large and complex world. And on Nistaros Lashem Elokeinu, that which is hidden belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here the Mechaber is trying to give us insight. These are some possibilities as to sometimes why the righteous would suffer, but don't assume that if you see a righteous person suffering, it automatically fits into one of these constructs. Now remember, that's the first side of the equation. What's the other side of the equation? Why do the wicked prosper? Right? At the end of the day, why do the Rishaim sometimes have a very good life? So we'll say, let's at least begin this. He says, Aval Tova Zakal Yisbarach ala Rasha. So why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu allow the Rasha to succeed? So here we'll say he gives 6 reasons. Number 1, Yesh Shetiye Ba'avor Tova Shekad Malo Yigmalei Elokim Aleha Ba'olam Hazeh Kimo Sha'amar Umeshalim L'sonav Alpanav Lahavido V'tir Gemu Barishonim Umeshalim L'soneim Tavan Di'inun Avdin Kadmoi B'chayevon La'avdehon. So we'll say reason number 1 is the Rasha may have done something good. So because the Rasha did something good, therefore what? Therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewards him for his good. But where does he reward him for his good? In this world. In this world. So we'll say, just like there's no such thing as a tzaddik who doesn't do an Aveira, there's also no such thing as a Rasha who never commits a mitzvah. Right? So because there's a Rasha who commits, every Rasha commits mitzvahs as well. So therefore, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and sometimes repays the Rasha for his particular mitzvah in this world. Number 2, the Yesh. Shetiya al derech hapikadon etzlo, ad sheyitin lo akel yisbarach ben tzadik yeroi lo, kimo she'amar yochin v'tzadik yilbosh, v'amar v'lachote nosan inyon lasof alichnos laseis tov v'nelke. Also, it's incredible. Reason number 2 is because sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that the Rasha is going to have righteous offspring. This is incredible. So therefore, what does Hashem do? Hashem gives the bracha to the wicked individual to hold almost like as a pikadon, as a deposit for his righteous offspring. Isn't that incredible? So in other words, the bracha is not for the Rasha. The bracha ultimately again is for the tzaddik offspring that he's going to have. But so that the bracha should be available for the tzaddik offspring, he gives it to the Rasha now. Incredible. Number 3, V'afshar shetiya asiba gdola shevesivos moso v'ra'aso kimo shekasov osher shamar lebalav l'ra'aso. I will say this is incredible that sometimes number 3 says sometimes the bracha is in and of itself a punishment. Sometimes the bracha is a punishment because we will say we all know this. Sometimes wealth is not a blessing, and sometimes material items are not blessings. But in fact, they become the very undoing of the individual. So sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu confers bracha upon the wicked person, not as a form of bracha, but in fact as a form of punishment. So we'll have to stop over here. We're 3 in. We have 3 more. Me'eretz Hashem, we will continue. Shkoyach.